My husband, Dr. Julian Croft, was the most renowned ophthalmologist in the state. He had recently taken on the case of a young, orphaned girl who was blind. He didn't just treat her, he cared for her with the tenderness of a father. "Clara," he said to me one evening, his eyes full of a hopeful light, "what if we adopted Quinn? Then you wouldn't have to go through the pain of childbirth again." Looking at his expectant face, I found myself unable to form the words to refuse. That night, Quinn moved into our son's bedroom, and Julian never left her side. The girl was sensitive and deeply resistant to me and our son, Leo. To accommodate her delicate emotions, Leo and I were forced to move out of our own home. I held my pouting son close, whispering comforts, promising him that things would get better soon. And in a way, they did. 2 weeks later, Quinn's sight was restored. But in a cruel twist of fate, that was the very same day our son, Leo, was blinded in a freak accident. They both had surgery on the same day, in the same hospital, with the very same surgeon. Julian had always been fascinated by my eyes. The first time he saw me, he approached me with tears welling in his own. "Excuse me," he'd said, his voice trembling slightly, "can I take a picture of your eyes?" The tears, combined with the bizarre request, convinced me I'd encountered some kind of oddball, a pervert perhaps. I turned and fled. But Julian was persistent. He spent a full week searching the sprawling university campus for me. He was a distinguished visiting professor at the medical school, a titan in his field. I was just a lowly teaching assistant, barely out of my probationary period. I knocked on my department head's door, my hand shaking, certain I was about to be fired for some unknown mistake. But when I entered, I saw Julian Croft sitting on the sofa. He was dressed more impeccably than the day we first met, as if attending a long-awaited and important rendezvous. "Ah, Ms. Shen," my boss said warmly. "This is Professor Croft. He has a few things he'd like to ask you." Julian stood and took my hand, his large palm completely enveloping mine. My boss cleared his throat. "Well, I'll leave you two to talk. Professor, Clara is new here and a bit shy. Please be mindful." Julian released my hand, and I saw the tips of his ears turn a sudden, sharp red as he took a sip of tea. He didn't ask me much that day. He simply sat there, gazing at my eyes for what felt like an eternity. We sat in silence for half an hour. "Professor Croft, was there something you needed?" I finally mustered the courage to ask, feeling unnerved by his intense stare. If not, I should get back to work. "May I call you Clara?" he asked, his voice full of a strange urgency. "Is that too forward?" "Yes, of course." "Not at all," I stammered, nodding quickly. After a few more minutes of stilted conversation, he added me on social media and reluctantly let me go. After he left, my boss called me back into his office. He was quiet for a long moment before asking, "Clara, has anyone ever told you that your eyes are captivating?" I shook my head, confused. My eyes were ordinary. Not almond-shaped, not doe-eyed. The only thing remotely unique was their deep brown color and the fact that they always seemed to have a moist, glistening quality. My boss clapped a hand on my shoulder, his expression unreadable. "What do you think of Professor Croft?" I gave a non-committal answer, knowing so little about him. "If you think he's a decent man, give him a chance," he advised. "But if you ever feel uncomfortable, don't hesitate to refuse him." I left his office in a daze. Back at my desk, a friend request from Julian Croft was waiting for me. From that day on, Julian, a man known for his cool and distant demeanor, pursued me with a passionate intensity that swept me off my feet. He orchestrated every romantic scenario imaginable, anticipated my every need, and wrapped me in a cocoon of happiness. People were baffled. They couldn't understand what this brilliant doctor saw in my plain, unremarkable looks. "Her face is just average," I'd overhear them whisper. "What on earth does Dr. Croft see in her?" But those who knew Julian well would always look at me and say the same thing, "Your eyes are beautiful. They really do look a bit like hers." "Like whose?" Whenever I pressed for an answer, the subject was quickly changed. Julian would just cup my face in his hands, look deep into my eyes, and say, "Darling, your eyes are the most beautiful in the world. They're like the treasure of my heart." He said it, and I believed him. I savored those words. I never imagined that those same eyes, those same words, would be the ruin of my life. Julian was so good to me that even my parents thought I'd won the lottery. After a whirlwind 6-month courtship, we were married. At the wedding, he swore an oath of eternal love. But as his old university friends toasted us, I felt a growing unease. Though their words were directed at me, they seemed to be referencing someone else entirely. Julian's dream has finally come true. A love like that deserves a happy ending. It seems Julian was always destined to be captivated by a woman like her. It takes a special kind of fate to find such a perfect match. Julian truly spared no effort. My heart began to pound. I racked my brain, trying to think of any woman Julian was close to, anyone I might resemble. There was no one. This is just my overactive imagination, I told myself, clutching my wine glass, my palm slick with sweat. I've been reading too many of those doppelganger novels. Then, during the exchange of vows, the most sacred part of the ceremony, Julian's phone rang. He answered it, his face paling, and rushed off the stage without a word. He was gone for a long time. I stood there alone, a spectacle of confusion and humiliation as a murmur went through our guests. I learned later that his mentor's entire family had been in a catastrophic car accident that day. When Julian finally returned, his eyes were red-rimmed. He couldn't even finish the vows he had written himself. That night, he boarded a flight to another country, leaving me to handle the aftermath of our ruined wedding alone. Adrift and lonely in our new house, I wandered into his study. Tucked inside a heavy English medical textbook, I found a faded photograph, its corners softened from being handled countless times. In it, a beautiful girl was laughing, her arm slung around a younger, beaming Julian. On the back, a handwritten note, Julian and Helena. Year 7 in the capital. The name Helena was circled, with the word beloved written beside it. My heart skipped a beat. I studied the girl's face. She looked nothing like me. She was radiant, like the midday sun. I was a dim star in comparison. I didn't sleep that night. I called Julian over and over, but he never picked up. For an entire week, I sent over 100 messages. Not a single reply. Panic began to set in. I contacted his friends, they had no idea where he was. 3 more days passed. Just as I was about to book a flight to find him, he came home. He was a ghost of himself, gaunt and hollow-eyed. I wanted to ask about the photograph, but he was a wreck, locking himself in the study and pouring glass after glass of whiskey. I called to him through the door, and he began to sob, his voice thick with alcohol. Helena. Helena, where are you? Come back. Don't leave me, I miss you so much. I answered him, my own voice breaking, until he finally drank himself into a stupor. I let myself in with the spare key. He was slumped in his chair, clutching that old photograph. I covered him with a blanket and quietly left. That night, I searched online for information about Julian's graduating class, but found nothing suspicious. It's just post-wedding jitters, I told myself, desperate to believe it, terrified of discovering the truth that he didn't love me. The next morning, Julian was up early. The study was spotless, and he had prepared breakfast. He woke me with a gentle kiss on my eyelids. Wrapped in his affection, my anxieties melted away. I never asked him who was in the photograph. From that day on, Julian loved me more than ever. Or rather, he loved my eyes more than ever. His love for my eyes bordered on obsession. He took hundreds of close-up photographs of them, painted dozens of portraits, and even sculpted them in wax. He took out a massive insurance policy on them. Every morning, he would personally apply a special cream around my eyes. Every night, he brewed me tonics said to improve vision. I never found it strange. I thought it was just his way of showing his love. 2 weeks after the wedding, he looked at me with that familiar, intense gaze. Clara, let's have a child. A daughter, I hope. I want her to have your eyes. I blushed and agreed, my heart swelling with love for him, for the family we would build. While we were trying to conceive, he took me to a temple high in the mountains. We climbed over 9,000 steps, hand in hand. He knelt, pressing his forehead to the cold stone floor, murmuring prayers under his breath. He received the most auspicious fortune from a master, who told him his wish would undoubtedly come true that day. Julian was so overjoyed he got drunk, murmuring my name in his sleep, telling me again and again how beautiful my eyes were. He never missed a single prenatal appointment. During the 3D ultrasound, he pointed at the blurry screen. "Clara, look. The baby's eyes, they look just like yours. So beautiful." The technician chuckled. "Dr. Croft certainly adores you. He'll be a wonderful father." After the scan, Julian spoke with the technician for a long time. He came running back to me, his face alight with pure joy. "Clara. It's a girl. Our dream is coming true." During the delivery, he paced anxiously outside the operating room. When I was finally wheeled out, exhausted but happy, I looked for him, craving his comfort. But he barely glanced at me. He rushed straight to the baby's bassinet. "He's just worried about the baby," I told myself, trying to quell the sting of jealousy. The next second, his voice, sharp and frantic, cut through the quiet hum of the hospital. "Why is it a boy? It was supposed to be a girl. Where is my daughter? What have you done with my daughter?" The normally composed Julian was shaking the nurse holding our son, his raw panic terrifying me. His mother had to slap him across the face to bring him to his senses. That night, Julian vanished from the hospital. He didn't return, not even for my discharge. When I arrived home with our son, the house reeked of alcohol. Julian was passed out in the study. His mother, her face grim, took the baby from my arms and stormed into the study to confront him. Through the thick door, I heard Julian's anguished voice. "Why did it happen this way? The master said it would be a daughter. He said she would be Helena." "Helena? Why would our daughter be Helena?" I was utterly lost. His mother's voice was sharp with urgency. "Why don't you go and look at the child? His eyes, they're beautiful. They look just like hers, too." A moment later, Julian stumbled into our bedroom, smelling of stale whiskey. He picked up our son, Leo, and stared into his tiny face. He began to both laugh and cry. "Clara," he whispered, his voice cracking, "our son's eyes. They're so beautiful. They're exactly like yours." Julian named our son Leo. He said a name that started with the father's and ended with the mother's name symbolized their love. He was a devoted father, doting on Leo. Handling every late-night feeding for the first year so I could rest. On Leo's first birthday, Julian climbed those 9,000 steps again to give thanks at the temple. He returned happier than I had ever seen him. That night, I overheard him on the phone, talking excitedly, mentioning Leo's name. "His birth," Julian said, "is paving the way for Helena's return." I thought our happiness would last. But when Leo was 5, Julian disappeared for another week. This time, he returned from abroad with a blind, 11-year-old girl named Quinn. She was, he explained, an orphan and his new patient. From the day she arrived, Julian never came home. Worried, I took a distraught Leo to the hospital. Through the window of a private room, we saw Julian holding Quinn, reading her a bedtime story. Leo, overjoyed to see his father, ran inside. A second later, Leo was thrown out of the room, his face streaked with tears. Julian appeared in the doorway, his voice severe. "Clara, who told you to bring him here?" "I'm busy. Go home." Inside, Quinn began to wail, and Julian immediately rushed back to her side. I told myself Leo must have misbehaved and let it go. The next day, Julian came to our temporary apartment. He didn't even take off his shoes before grabbing my hands. "Clara, let's adopt Quinn, okay? Then you won't have to go through the pain of childbirth again." I was too stunned to speak. Seeing my hesitation, he pulled me into an embrace. "Clara, Quinn has no one. She'll be a companion for Leo. And I'm very fond of her. And you'll love anyone I love, won't you?" How could I refuse the hope in his eyes? "I knew you'd agree," he murmured. "I love you so much." That night, Quinn moved into Leo's room in our house. Julian watched over her tirelessly. When Leo tried to enter his own room to see his father, he was thrown out and warned never to set foot in there again. "Julian, that's too much," I protested. "Leo did nothing wrong." "Quinn is afraid of strangers," he explained quickly. "I was protecting him. She might have thrown something at him." The next morning, I brought breakfast for Quinn. She knocked the bowl of hot porridge out of my hands, scalding my arm. Julian, hearing her cry, came running. "Clara Shen," he roared, his face a mask of cold fury. "She's just a child. How can you be so cruel?" "I was just trying to feed her. I didn't do anything." I cried, but he wasn't listening. He threw me and Leo out of our own house. "Quinn is sick, sweetheart," I told my son, holding him tight. "We'll stay somewhere else for a little while, and when she's better, we'll go back." Leo nodded obediently. "When Sister Quinn's eyes are better, I want to play with her." 2 weeks later, Quinn's vision was restored. That same day, on his way home from school, Leo was in an accident that left him blind. At the hospital, I held my son and wept until I had no tears left. Julian was busy throwing a party for Quinn to celebrate her newfound sight. He never once came to see Leo. Exhausted, I fell asleep by my son's hospital bed. When I woke, a folded piece of paper was tucked into my pocket. On it were 3 typed words: "The surgery is suspicious." A cold dread washed over me. The timing was too perfect. Quinn and Leo, same day, same hospital, same surgeon. I rushed to Quinn's room and asked a nurse to get Julian. I waited. The nurse called for him again and again, but he wouldn't come out. I pushed the door open myself. And I saw her face clearly for the first time. The last time I'd seen her, her eyes were bandaged. I'd felt a flicker of familiarity, but couldn't place it. Now, I knew. She was the spitting image of the girl in the faded photograph. She was a young Helena. "You. Outside. We need to talk," I said, grabbing Julian's arm. "Daddy, don't go," Quinn whimpered, clutching his sleeve, her eyes glistening. "I'm scared." "Clara, whatever it is, say it here," said a woman sitting nearby. It was one of Julian's friends, the same one who had drunkenly hugged me at the wedding, insisting I was her best friend. I suddenly realized the room was filled with them, his inner circle. "Fine," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Since everyone is here, I want to know why it's such a coincidence that she can see, and my son is now blind." A flash of anger crossed Julian's face. He loosened his tie, trying to compose himself. "Must you really bring up such trivial matters at a happy time like this?" "Trivial? My son is blind, Julian. That's trivial to you? Is he not your son, too?" Tears streamed down my face, but I wiped them away fiercely. Julian's friends began talking over one another. "Clara, the nurse told you, right? Leo was in an accident on his way home." "No. I want the truth from you," I screamed, pointing at Julian. He dragged me out of the room. "Clara, what is wrong with you?" he hissed, his patience gone. "The truth is what they told you. What more do you want?" He turned to go back inside. I grabbed him, and he shoved me away. I stumbled, my head cracking against the metal railing. As joyous music swelled from Quinn's room, I heard a different sound, the terrified sobs coming from my son's room down the hall. "It's okay, baby, Mom is here," I whispered, holding Leo, trying to get him to remember what happened. But he was lost in a new, endless darkness, too terrified to do anything but cry for his mother and his father. The father who was celebrating a stranger's new life. Once Leo was asleep, I got the surgical records. They were clear. Leo's surgery was first. 15 minutes later, Quinn's began. The cause of Leo's injury was listed as puncture wound by a sharp object. But it didn't specify what object. I hired a nurse to watch Leo and began my own investigation. I walked the route he took home from school, checking every security camera. But on that day, he hadn't taken his usual path. He had turned down a blind alley with no cameras. What could have made my obedient son walk down a strange, dark alley? The less evidence there was, the more suspicious it became. At the hospital entrance, I saw my own parents rushing in. I thought they were coming to see Leo, but they walked right past his floor and went straight to Quinn's room. Hugging her, crying with joy. My parents? No, wait. They weren't my parents. They were Julian's mentor and his wife. Helena's parents. They had survived the crash. The only way to find the truth was through Quinn. Thank God Julian had never been stingy with money. I hired the best private investigator I could find. When the report came, I slapped myself again and again, the sting on my cheek a pale imitation of the pain in my heart. The clues had been there from the beginning: Julian's obsession, the department head's warning, the friend's cryptic toasts. I was a forgery. A counterfeit with eyes that looked like Helena Shin's. The PI's report laid it all bare. Helena was the only daughter of Julian's mentor. They were college sweethearts, set to marry after graduation. But a month before the wedding, Helena had broken it off, and her family had moved abroad without a word. Julian, heartbroken, followed them, only to learn she had married an overseas Chinese man. He returned a broken man. During his 6-month depression, rumors surfaced that Helena's father had been involved in a bribery scandal. Julian was a lifeless doll until he met me. After that, he and Helena had sporadic contact. The day of our wedding, Helena, driving with her parents, had the fatal car accident. That was why Julian had abandoned me. But why hadn't he brought Quinn back then? Why wait years? The PI's report also contained a disturbing detail. The police report from Helena's crash noted that besides alcohol, her blood contained an unidentified substance known to cause sudden blackouts. The prescription for this drug was in Quinn's name, for anxiety. This had caused a fight between Quinn and her stepfather. He had been arrested for child abuse after she was injured in the altercation, leaving her an orphan in Julian's care. The stepfather insisted Quinn was not his biological child and claimed she had murdered her own mother. It was all suspicious, but none of it was proof. Julian found out I was investigating. He cornered me in a stairwell, his face twisted into a mask of pure violence I had never seen before. What the hell are you doing? Donor information is private. I know it's hard to believe, but it was a coincidence. Stop looking for trouble. It's impossible. My son is blind, and Helena Shin's daughter can see. The moment I said her name, he slammed me against the wall, his hand closing around my throat. You are not worthy of speaking her name, he whispered, his breath hot and menacing. You should be grateful. Without her, you wouldn't be worthy of standing by my side. He stared at my eyes with disgust. Don't look at me like that. It's a shame such beautiful eyes are wasted on you. He released me, and I collapsed, my sobs echoing in the empty stairwell. But I wouldn't give up. The next day, I went back to the alley. My son's birthday was coming. An old, scheduled message popped up on my phone from his watch. Mommy, happy birthday. Do you like the lilacs I got for you? Daddy helped me find them. I love you, Mommy, and I love Daddy too. Lilacs. The watch. I found his school bag, caked in dirt. Inside was his watch, the face crushed. After visiting a dozen repair shops, I found one man in a dusty corner who said he could try to fix it. While I waited, I found the dried, molding lilac from his bag. It all started to connect. 2 days later, the watch was fixed. I scrolled through it, but found nothing. Dejected, I went back to the alley one last time. A couple was arguing near the wilted lilac bushes. It's your fault for not getting a good shot the other day, the girl complained. Now all the flowers are dead. The video should still be fine, the boy said, fiddling with a camera. I can just take a screenshot from the video. I filmed for hours. Video. My heart leaped. I paid them for a copy. I watched 2 hours of footage of flowers. Then, at the very end, I saw him. My son, Leo, running into the alley. At the far end, a man was waiting. The light was dim, but I heard Leo's clear voice. Daddy. It was Julian. He had taken the day off, claiming he needed to care for Quinn. But this blurry video wasn't enough. I kept searching the alley, desperate. I stumbled, and as I looked up, I saw it. A security camera on the house across from the lilacs. The house was abandoned, but it was my only hope. I tracked down the owners and got the memory card. The video loaded. My blood ran cold. It was Julian, standing at the end of the alley. He held out a bunch of lilacs. "Leo," he said. "Aren't they beautiful? Do you like them?" "Yes. If Mommy likes them, I like them too," my son chirped. "Good. Look at them for a little while longer," Julian said. I could see the hesitation on his face, a man making a terrible choice. "This is our little secret, okay? A surprise for Mommy." As Leo nodded, carefully placing the flowers in his bag, Julian pulled a sharp, metallic object from his pocket and moved toward our son's eyes. "Daddy, what are you doing?" Leo asked, his voice filled with confusion. Julian froze. Then he struck his own son, knocking him unconscious, and carried him to a waiting ambulance parked just out of sight. I took the video and stormed into Julian's office. Quinn was there, clinging to his arm. "What do you want now?" he asked, annoyed. "You bad woman." Quinn spat. "Get out. You stole my daddy. My mommy died because of you." "I have proof, Julian." A flicker of panic crossed his face. He sent Quinn away and watched the video. He laughed. "What does this prove?" "That Leo had an accident while picking flowers for you? Imagine the guilt you would feel for the rest of your life. Did you know Helena hated lilacs? But you just had to love those common, vulgar flowers. All those years, every bouquet had been an act of resentment." The video wasn't enough to prove he'd taken the corneas. What happened in that operating room? As I was spiraling, Leo's own calm voice brought me back. He touched my face. "Don't be scared, Mommy. Daddy is a great doctor. He'll fix me. And Sister Quinn was blind too, so I'm not alone." Tears fell onto his small hand. "Today is my birthday, Mommy," he said. "I got you lilacs." "I know, baby. And I love them. I promise, I will make sure you can see again." Then, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Mommy, does Daddy not want us anymore? Why doesn't he come to see me?" At that moment, the PI called with two final pieces of information. The first was about Julian's obsession with having a daughter. The temple master had told him that Helena's soul would be reborn in the body of a girl, born to a woman with similar eyes and a similar name. That was why he'd been so sure our child would be Helena. Every time he had called me Clara, he had been thinking of Helena. The second piece was about Quinn. Just as her stepfather claimed, she was not his biological child. And she had, in fact, murdered her mother. I was sitting in Leo's room, trying to figure out how to use this information when Quinn herself walked in. She stood silently behind me. I turned, saw her, and with my hand in my pocket, I dialed Julian's number and left the line open. "What do you want?" I asked her. "I came to see how you're feeling," she said with a smirk that didn't belong on a child's face. She lit a cigarette. "If you hadn't married Daddy, my mother wouldn't have died, and I wouldn't have gone blind. So it's only fair that your son paid the price. Mother's debt, son's payment." "How dare you say that?" I seethed. "I remember that day," she said, taking a long drag. "Mommy and my stepfather had a huge fight. She was going to fly back to your country, back to him. She left me behind. She said I was her stain. The reason Daddy didn't want her anymore." She paused, her eyes hardening. "So, since she didn't want me, I returned the favor. I made her a cup of coffee. With a little something extra." "She was your mother. You're a monster." I screamed, trying to bait her further. "She never loved me anyway. Her death was no loss." A look of triumphant satisfaction spread across her face. Just then, Leo came in, tapping his cane. Quinn grabbed him. I froze. You know, she hissed at him, I was so jealous when I heard you call him daddy. Why should you have what I never could? So I took your eyes. I told him I wanted your eyes, and he gave them to me. Leo's body trembled. He bit down hard on her wrist, and as she cried out, he scrambled away, falling to the floor. You're lying, he sobbed. Am I? She taunted. Watch the video. Oh, that's right. You can't. She played a video on her phone. It was Julian, in his surgical scrubs, giving instructions to his assistant. Are you sure about this, sir? The assistant pleaded. Once you do this, Leo's life will be ruined. And there will be no turning back for you. Julian walked resolutely into the operating room. He had taken his own son's corneas with his own hands. I saw red. I gently lifted my weeping son onto a chair and lunged at Quinn. Before I could reach her, Julian burst in. He shoved me aside and grabbed Quinn's hands. Daddy, I was just visiting Leo, but she tried to hit me. Quinn cried, her face a perfect picture of innocence. But Julian's eyes held no pity. Only a cold, simmering hatred. Is it true? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Daddy, you saw her push me. I'm not talking about that, he said, his grip tightening. I'm talking about Helena's death. Quinn's face fell, but she bluffed. Daddy, what are you talking about? I don't know anything. That's when I played the recording from my phone. Her face twisted into a venomous snarl. Yes. I killed her, she screamed at Julian. She abandoned me for you. If she didn't want me, why did she give birth to me? I'm your child, why didn't she want you to see me? Julian listened, his face contorting in agony and rage. He lunged, his hands closing around her throat. You vicious little monster. She was the best person in the world. Quinn gasped for air. Leo stood up, his small voice cutting through the chaos. Daddy, let her go. Is it true, Daddy? Did you take my eyes? Julian's body went slack. He turned to his son, his blind son, and collapsed to his knees. Leo, I'm so sorry, he sobbed, tearing at his hair. It was all my fault. I'll get your eyes back, I promise. Please, just forgive me. Quinn, gasping on the floor, heard this. She grabbed a fruit knife from the table and lunged at Leo. I threw myself over my son, shielding him with my body. There was a sickening thud. A knife was protruding from Quinn's chest. Julian stood over her, his eyes red with madness, pressing the handle deeper into her heart. This is for killing Helena, he growled. And for what you did to my son. Go to hell. I covered Leo's ears as the life drained from Quinn's face. With her last breath, she clutched Julian's sleeve. Daddy, do you love me? You won't leave me like Mommy did, will you? He kicked her hand away. I'm not your father. Your father was a street thug. He's long dead. No, you're lying. Helena was assaulted by that thug, Julian spat. She had to marry your stepfather to cover up the shame of giving birth to you. That's why she hated you. You were the stain on her life. You should have died a long time ago. With those words, Quinn's last breath left her body. Julian wiped the blood on his hands and walked toward us. Clara, he said, holding out his arms. Can I hold you one last time? I recoiled, pulling Leo back. He looked down at the blood on his coat, stripped it off, and tried again. I'm clean now. Can I hold you and Leo? You disgust me, Julian, I said, my voice filled with revulsion. If you loved Helena so much, why didn't you just die with her? He stood frozen, a look of dawning regret on his face. I think I was already starting to crave your warmth back then, but I didn't know it. In the end, it was all my fault. His eyes found mine. Don't worry, Clara. I'll pay for my sins. Leo will see again. He took off his wedding ring, carefully wiped it clean, and placed it on the table in front of me. Then, he called the police. 6 months later, Leo had adjusted to his world of darkness, and I had adjusted to a life without Julian. On Julian's birthday, I received 2 calls. The first was from the prison. He wanted to see me and Leo one last time. I refused without a moment's hesitation. The second call was from the hospital. A cornea donor had been found for Leo. The donor was a death row inmate, scheduled for execution. A month and a half later, Leo's surgery was a success. The day he saw the world again was his own birthday. I had a bouquet of lilacs waiting for him. With his new sight came a new life. I gave him a new name, Chase. A reminder to chase the future and forget the past. It was a reminder for me, too. To forget Julian. We stood before Julian's grave. Chase bowed his head deeply, a final acknowledgement of their broken father-son bond. From that day on, our last connection to him was severed. Sunlight filtered through the trees, dappling Chase's face. He smiled. I took my son's hand, and together, we walked out of the cemetery and toward our new life.